Alright. Hi, so we're here with Zach Segars, one of the co-founders of Let's Talk Broncos. Zach, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'd love to. Zach Segars, like you said, co-founder, co-host, Let's Talk Broncos, editor-in-chief, wearing lots of different hats for them over there. Also do some production work over at 850 KOA and iHeartRadio, and then have done some writing currently for Let's Talk Broncos, but also for Mile High Sports in the past. So a little bit of grab bag of sports media for you.
Yeah. So you're involved in a lot, obviously, within sports media. How did you first get into sports journalism?
Yeah. I in a class, honestly. I had a senior year English teacher who I adore, Doc Z, Dr. Zerwin. Um, she was awesome. Her whole thing was we didn't have like tests or really many assigned readings. It was just we were going to write something every week. And there were only vague guardrails on what that would be. But there was like 15 different, assignments or whatever in a semester you had to do. Um, and I was a huge football fan. I was not a hardworking student, and I was like, I know how I'm going to game the system here. I'm just going to write about football, and did that. And then by the end of the first semester, I wrote for like the final, I wrote this crazy, like 10-page manuscript about the Cleveland Browns, and she gave it to the editor-in-chief at Mile High Sports, who she had gone to high school with, and had a relationship with, and they brought me on as an intern right as I graduated high school. Um, did that for a year, where I was interning on the magazine, just um, saying yes to any opportunity that came up, pestering them about every week, what do you have for me that hasn't been handed out yet? What is it? And just grabbing whatever table scraps I could, did that for a year, and then was an intern on their website writing about the Broncos for a year, did that. And then they brought me on as an employee on the Broncos beat. So I kept writing for them. Really was the same thing I was doing as an intern. I was just getting paid for it now. Did that for another year or two. And then it got set up to where I was credentialed going, or I guess just a year. I started getting credentialed halfway through that 2019 season to do Broncos stuff, go to games, practices, whatnot, through Mile High Sports. And yeah, that's kind of how I got into it. Been rolling and growing that whole dream ever since.
Yeah. Can you walk us through the process of obtaining press credentials to cover the Broncos? What was that experience like?
Yeah, a couple different answers there. For me, the first time it was very simple. It was just, I'm working for Mile High Sports. They need people to get to the practices, get to the games. They already had a working relationship with the Broncos, had credentialed people in the past. Um, so they reached out, kind of said, hey, we have this guy we want to get credentialed. I went to a few practices with a guy who worked at Mount High Sports, who had already been credentialed by the team. So I went with him a couple times. I think just to make sure I'm not like some crazy person, or that I could behave myself. I don't know, just a small little barrier. Checked me out, scoped me out. I introduced myself to the important people in charge. Um, and then yeah, they approved me for a credential. Um, Now I'm going through a different process, a more I don't know. I'm going through the process myself rather than having it be done for me.
Mm.
Um, just starting Let's Talk Broncos. This is now my own media company, so I don't have that. Uh, our company doesn't have that pre-existing relationship with the Broncos, even if I do personally. So you go onto the NFL's credentialing website in about July-ish. Teams start posting them through May, June, July. Broncos were pretty late this year, but around July-ish, you go to the NFL's credentialing website, you fill out the whole form, and then at the very end, you find out whether or not your team is open for credentials yet. I had to do it a few times this summer before they were finally open. You put the request in, and then you'll either get approved or you'll get a response kind of explaining, why it was a no, and what to improve on, and to get there to be improved or to be approved. Um, the Broncos are notoriously stingy with their media rules, and they've only become more so since Sean Payton became a head coach.
Mhm. Yeah. Um, as a member of the Broncos beat reporter, what has that experience been like? You kind of touched on that with the difference with Sean Payton, but what are some of like the challenges and rewards of covering the team on that day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I think the challenges are, it's a good question. The time doing that while I was in school, I think was definitely a challenge. Um, for me, I think the Broncos can be very frustrating in some ways because they are stingy with what they allow in terms of media access. And I also think Denver, they've been that way for so long. I mean, literally mean like 30 years.
Mhm.
Um, that I think Denver media as a whole um, has a laid back culture, maybe would be a good way of putting it, where, um, I think that was one frustrating thing is I would show up and I'm like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Like, okay, we're watching them do a walkthrough for practice, but we all know we're not getting anything from this. Like, we're just standing here because we kind of are supposed to stand here for an hour.
Mhm.
But in all reality, what are we getting from this hour? What knowledge are we gaining from this? Yes, we're charting who's out there, who's not out there at practice. Okay, that takes 2 minutes. And if you're not the first person to put that information out, it doesn't really matter. And even if you are the first person to put it out there, it's exclusive content for 10, 15 seconds. So
Mhm.
that was probably the challenge for me is it felt like a big time investment for not a lot. And I don't think
Yeah.
that would be the standard impression if I was on, all 32 NFL beats. From what I've gathered from national media, from talking to media members that are there that have worked in other markets, the Broncos are especially pared down. So I think that's one challenge. Um, I think being young, this is uh, a male-dominated profession, of course, but it's also like an older male dominated profession. It's a lot of 40, 50-year-old dudes that have been doing this for 30 years and
Yeah.
do not like young people, young, cheap people, I should say, entering the game. That
Yeah.
gets them a little uneasy and a little uncomfortable.
Mhm.
I think that was a challenge. I'm reaching for the challenges, though. It was far more rewarding than anything, getting to interact with these people. By people, I mean players, coaches, even
Mhm.
some media members on a daily basis is so cool. I've definitely learned a lot from those media member interactions, learned a lot from the player interactions. It just polishes good skills for you too. With these classes in journalism school or any sort of media school, you've got time to prepare for your projects, or you kind of might know an area, a path to go down or something. You might have some idea. Whereas, you get dumped into the Broncos locker room after a Wednesday practice or whatever. And like one, that's uncomfortable. Like,
Mhm.
that these people don't want you really to be there. That's another challenge, frankly. I felt uncomfortable being there. I felt like I shouldn't necessarily be there. I do think that's something, a policy that maybe the NFL should change. Um, and then it's like, okay, who's even available to you? There's
Mhm.
all these rules about, if they're already talking with someone else and it's not a scrum, you don't necessarily want to go into that. Some people are going to be in the showers. Some people are going to be in the weight room. Some people are going to be in the training room getting stretched out or whatever. Some people are
Mhm.
going to be off that day. Some people are going to be in their team meeting rooms going through film, and you have no idea until you walk into the locker room who's what. You might be like, hey, also you might see a guy, hey, I need to talk to, I don't know, Justin Simmons or like PJ Lock. I'm writing a story about defensive backs. So let me
Mhm.
grab Justin Simmons and PJ Lock. I see them there, and then I'll grab Pat Surtain and I turn around and oh shit, now Pat Surtain's gone and he's not going to be back.
Mhm.
'Cause he's off to do whatever next part of his day. So just that ability to, okay, like, I don't know, in a pop quiz format almost, having to come up with stories, come up with quality interview questions, knowing how to handle those interviews tastefully, ways where you're getting engaging responses from the guys. Um, I think those challenges and then just the immersive nature of it, being on the field as like this football stuff is going on and having some access that, not everyone has as a true like sports nerd was really cool. And I think probably one of the more rewarding aspects.
Yeah. So let's talk Broncos. So what was the inspiration behind you, Bree, and Joey founding that media company?
Yeah, so kind of getting back to what I was talking about with media culture in Denver. I think one uh and some of it's gotten beaten into media in Denver, but I think it's not like a East Coast sensibility or I
Mhm.
know that's what you're at University of Illinois. Not a Chicago style beat. It's very
Yeah.
soft. It's very gentle. Um, or there's the performative negativity. There's really
Mhm.
those two camps. I felt like there was a camp, a very large camp of what I would call fanalysis,
Yeah.
um, and a smaller camp, but still a prominent camp of what can we be mad about today? How can we be mad about Sean Payton? How can we be mad about Bo Nix? Well, he's doing no 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 no. Like just what can we find to like just be a downer about and be grumpy and be mad about? We see that in social media and media in general. I felt like there was a huge untapped market for what I wanted as a sports fan, which was like, I want to know more about the Broncos. Like I want to
Yeah.
learn about what's happening with this team. I want to know what their outlook looks like for this season or what's wrong with the quarterback. How could he get better? Like I want to learn about the players, about the team, about the scheme, about the coach. Like I want to know more. I want greater information. And I felt like I still feel like that, frankly. There's no outlet in Denver that was serving that need. And I
Mhm.
also felt I can't be the only person out there that wants this. I know most people want to hear the sweet nothings whispered in their ear. Some people want to be angry. There's got to be some people that also just love the sports and just want to learn more about it. Um, and I thought also growing my brand at Mile High Sports, I was always trying to find, what can my niche be here at Mile High Sports or on this Broncos beat?
Mhm.
Um, and so I had kind of built a reputation for myself, or at least I'd like to think I had, of being reliable, of being honest in my analysis, of not being overly positive or overly negative, just, kind of calling balls and strikes. And so that was one part of it. And then just working with Joey and Bree, I got to know these two people in the Broncos beat that I felt were similar to me in terms of our aims and goals, and how we felt about the Broncos and the mediascape. Um, really knowledgeable people, which was important to me. Again, I'm kind of about expanding my information or my knowledge. Uh, and then they also had different perspectives than me. Like Joey knows some ins and outs about like schematic or like offensive like trench technique. Like he knows offensive line play and defensive line play far better than I do because he's got a fair bit of experience playing both those sides of the ball. Um, Bree is a lot more glass half full than Joey and I. I think we can be a little sardonic. Or a little glass half empty, admittedly. Frankly, it's been easy to be that way about the Broncos this last decade, but
Yeah.
I think we can definitely err on that side of negativity. I also
Mhm.
have an understanding that this fan base does want to hear the good things about their team, maybe more than most. So
Mhm.
seeing out someone like Bree that is more glass half full, but still offers that in-depth analysis, that like that voice of honesty and whatnot, was really appealing to me, and I thought balanced it out well. And then, just interacting, talking Broncos naturally on, social media or at different events and whatnot. The three of us became like real close, real life friends. And so it was like, hey, let's do this show together. Um, I had actually started up a draft focused podcast with Joey, and we were doing that. There weren't any like long term goals there. It was just kind of getting us some reps. And I don't know what format this is being broadcast to your class. People get reps. I mean, in your classes, you're maybe getting 5 to 10 reps in terms of like, maybe your class is asking you to record 10 podcasts or write 10 articles. I feel like that's probably on the high end just
Mm,
based on what I was asked to do in college. Um, that's not enough reps. It's great and it's good that you're getting those reps. Seek out more, whether it's like a writing internship, writing on your own blog. Who cares if anyone's reading it? It's about you getting the reps, doing your own podcast, getting on someone's pod, saying yes to as many guest spots as you can. I think it's huge. So, anyways, in that aim, we had started up our own draft focused podcast, just trying to get some reps in. But it also became very clear that that idea had a pretty low ceiling on it. Um, and so as this vision started to grow, as this relationship with Bree started to grow, we were like, hey, let's get in on this together. Let's do a Broncos podcast. I was still with Mile High Sports at the time, so we did it for them for a while. And then just through doing that, we kind of realized, like this is great and all. And Mile High Sports was a great partner for us, but ultimately, there wasn't much being gained through that partnership that we couldn't gain in short order. It wouldn't be immediate, but gain in fairly short order if we
mm.
decided to go it on our own. And so we went independent with it and started our own thing. And, have just kind of I've built up some good relationships with media members, young media members in the Denver media sphere, and I've kept note of guys who I think are or ladies that I think are uh, thoughtful in their analysis. Whether or not they agree with me, if they can bring something to the table, ideally something that I don't have. I love seeking out the people with better film knowledge than me. The last guy I brought on, I'm kind of a numbers guy myself. Last guy I brought on knows the numbers a lot better than I do. So just trying to find those people that are honest in their analysis and can um, shore up our Broncos knowledge. Because again, our niche is kind of we want to be the most informative, the most honest Broncos media venture. And crazy as it is with how small we are, I think we've achieved that goal so far. And now it's just about spreading the word and having more people know it.
Yeah, absolutely. I also like to really quickly touch up on one of the things you mentioned a couple times there, which is like the Denver fan base kind of wanting to hear the good spin. How do you how do you sort of think like that fan base is evolving? Do you think have you noticed any changes like this year where the team is doing better?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Yeah, there is a difference. There's been a civil war raging in Denver for as long as I've done it
Mhm.
between, I'd say, more fanatical fans, maybe for lack of a great term, um, that do just want to like go Broncos go. We're number one.
Mhm.
Yeah, Drew Lock's the guy. Okay. Yeah, Russell Wilson's the guy. Yeah, and just like die on that hill and
Mhm.
then promptly move over to the next hill and die on that one. And then once you're dead, move on to the next hill. And that's kind of been one side. I
Yeah.
think another side has been more realistic, frankly.
Mhm.
Uh, and I'm talking about the fans, which is a little similar to the media thing, but the fans, I see this side that wants nothing but optimism and this side that's a little more, hey, like they're fans of the team. They're not trying to tear them down, but are a little more, like, hey, I don't know if this Drew Lock guy is the long-term answer. I think there's some concerning signs here. And they'll get yelled at for about 2 years. And then no one will ever be like, ah, sorry, I was wrong there. They'll just move on to the next and
Yeah.
yell at them for, how dare you think Russell Wilson's not good?
Mhm.
So that's been a constant up until this year. Now, those sides have kind of become aligned. And I think the people that were yelling at different Broncos fans for not being on board enough with Drew Lock or Russell Wilson or whatever it may be are now yelling at everyone in the NFL universe who doesn't believe enough in Bo Nix. Um, like I don't think the anger or the need to be, I hate to say it, the need to be babied has gone away any,
Mhm.
which is depressing to me. I thought that, okay, well, this is because people want Drew Lock to be good, but he's not. This is because people want Russell Wilson to be good but he's not. I thought once they had drafted a quarterback that did turn out to be good,
Mhm.
this insecurity wouldn't be as present. And it's just as present. I mean, I'm seeing analysts say, Bo Nix is having a really great rookie year, but the offense is a little too reliant on screens, which if you look at the metrics, they're running them at like the fourth highest rate in the league. It's an objectively true statement. And people are like, how dare you say Bo Nix is bad? And it's like, oh, okay, they did not say that. Whoa, whoa,
Yeah.
let's put it down. Or like, you're not even watching the games. You're trying to tear them down. And it's like, this is a subjective kind of silly thing and a difference of opinion.
Mhm.
So to answer your question, like it's interesting. I don't know. From what I've gathered from national media, um, Denver is fairly unique in that regard.
Mhm.
They're or more extreme, maybe not unique, but more extreme than most in that regard. Um, But yeah, I think that's the challenge. As far as like how that impacts my job and how I cover things, um, I have to do a lot more walking on eggshells than I'd like to do. There's a lot of times when I just want to say something like, "Hey, just so you know, like the people saying that Bo Nix is top 10 and checked, that's accurate. They're not just lying. Like that's an accurate stat they're citing."
Mhm.
I feel like I can't just say that. I have to preface it with a paragraph about, okay, everybody, I think Bo Nix is good. I
Mhm.
agree that some national media has been a little negative on him.
Yeah.
Okay, are we all there? All right. Now let me say a little bit of nuance. And like even then, I'll get 10 replies that are angry. So, probably, I don't know. I should probably be a little more divorced from that. I think you're probably going to deal with that with any sect of fandom, any team you end up covering, there's going to be fans that act that way. And I think just, yeah, it becomes easier. I think the first year I was doing this, I wanted to argue with everybody about it. And as it goes on, that bar for like what I view as a conversation worth engaging in, it keeps raising higher and higher to where I can just be like, okay, you are stupid. I'm just gonna let this fall.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, feel like I'm kind of rambling here, but let me know if I'm not answering your question.
No, that's all good. The Drew Lock Civil War is still fresh in all of our minds, so
Oh.
definitely good to touch back up on that. But I guess sort of a follow-up for that. So with Denver kind of having a little bit softer of a fan base, how do you think that affects like draft coverage for the team?
Oh, that's interesting. How, I think, huh, it's a good question. Post draft, I think there's definitely um, okay, a lot of people in Broncos country right now, to kind of go back to the Knicks thing, are going, "Oh, look at these idiots who thought Bo Nix wasn't the guy after 4 weeks. Now, 11 weeks in, we know for certain he is the guy." And it's like, or, Mac Jones won Rookie of the Year. Like I don't think we know yet. I think the signs are very positive, and this is something that, by the way, I've thought for a while, but will not tweet out because I know what will happen if I do. Um, but so what I'm getting at there is I think there's a desire to anoint someone as the guy. Greg Dulcich, who was just cut this year, was the guy after his rookie year. Um,
Mhm.
2 years later, doesn't even finish his rookie contract, is cut midseason because he was a healthy scratch like 10 weeks in a row. Okay, like um, so I think there's a rush to anoint people, and there is a crazy hesitancy. Like, Drew Lock, we were in year 3 of the guy not able to make simple reads. And it's like, well, but the coach doesn't believe in him. And it's like, okay, we can find whatever. Like, it just, and if the coach did believe in him, it would have been X. And if X was good, it would have been Y. And if Y was good, it would have been Z. Like, it's just a need to blame that failure on something other than maybe the player's not good. So I think That's one element. Pre-draft, I'm trying to think. I don't think it shows up too much pre-draft. I think the way it shows up most would be, maybe an unwillingness to move off of a young guy that needs to be moved off because of the aforementioned point about wanting to anoint someone too early and being hesitant to move off them. Um, Probably so, pre-draft cycle after Drew Lock, if you were talking about drafting a quarterback, you would have gotten some pushback there. I think the other one is maybe, but I think this is with all fan bases. Um, the whole mock draftiness of it all, making some people and mock draft simulators especially, making it so that people think a prospect that's going to go top 10 might be available for them at pick 25 or
Sure.
something like that. But I don't think that's that prominent. I'd say that's where it shows up in the draft.
Yeah. Um, and I know for Denver, we're coming out of a pretty unique stretch where Denver didn't have a first round pick for multiple years. Did you notice any kind of change in coverage or like what the fan base was responding to during those years?
I'm sorry, what was that? You cut out for a second.
Sorry. I know in Denver, we're coming out of a pretty unique stretch where we didn't have a first round pick for a couple of years. Did you notice any difference in how you had to cover the team or what draft coverage looked like during that period?
Yeah, that's a great point. Covering the draft was extremely difficult then.
Mm,
Um, just because most of what gets discussed is top 10 picks.
mm,
I'd say, that's 40% at least of the discussion.
mm,
Um, and then, what, 20, 30, I'd boost these numbers. 50% is probably about guys slated to go in the top 10. Maybe they fall to 15 or so.
mm,
Then probably another 25 is rounding out the first round. And then the remaining 25% is spent on the, remaining 6 rounds. And of that 25, 20 is probably on second round guys. Like it is so when you're talking about a team that doesn't have any picks in the first 2 rounds, it's difficult because the average fan isn't going to be familiar with Nick Benito, for example. Like that's not super on their radar. They might be familiar with a Kayvon Thibodeau or Trayvon Walker or Aiden Hutchinson, but they're probably not super familiar with Nick Benito heading into the draft. Um, so that it's just less exciting to talk about. If I'm a Broncos fan scrolling on social media, oh, the Broncos might get Nick Benito. I don't even know what the fuck that means. Oh, they might get Aiden Hutchinson. Like
yeah.
that. So I think that's one element of it. Um, and then I think the other element is it's harder to spend your time usefully. Like the Broncos will pick 18th or something this year, and we'll probably have a pretty good idea, or 12th when they just picked Bo Nix. Honestly, that's a better example. We had a pretty good idea of like 5 to maybe 10 players they were going to take with that pick.
Mm,
Um, probably a pretty solid list of five, and then maybe some sleepery picks.
yeah.
When they're picking whatever, like 73rd overall, God, I mean, it's such a wide net to cast because there's always draft day surprises. I know there's going to be, excuse me, 2 or 3 guys we're thinking of as first rounders that'll go around pick 73.
Mm,
Which those will be, we have no way of knowing now. That's why it's a surprise every year. Like
mm,
as for a same thing on the guys that people project to go around pick 100 and instead go around pick 73. I know there's a great chance of that happening. How do I forecast what players those are going to be? No clue, right?
mm,
Um, Also, teams' boards vary so much at that point in the draft. Top five is probably the top five just about everywhere. Maybe a name subbed in here and out. Maybe the order's different, but the names are largely the same. 15 to 20 or 15 to 25, on positional big boards, or if we're just going to talk general big boards, like 60 to 70 or 60 to 80 on every draft board around the league is going to be dramatically different team to team.
mm,
Um, so point just being, it's so hard to forecast and use that time usefully. You just have to try and study everyone a little bit
mm,
so you can be covered and then do kind of the backfill and do the more in-depth stuff once they're picked. Um, because it's just you can't do like a 3, 4 game study on all the players that the Broncos could potentially take. At least I can't with all the other stuff on my plate.
Yeah. I guess talking about going back to Let's Talk Broncos, can you kind of walk us through what does an average week like covering the team for Let's Talk Broncos?
Yeah. So Sunday game happens. Good chance I'm doing some work. As that happens, for KOA iHeart. So I'll take some notes as the game goes. Um, Game wraps up, I get started on my column. Or actually, that's not true. Game wraps up, I immediately do my post-game show. Post-game show ends, I get started on my column. Uh, uh, Spend a few days on that where I can, piecemeal out the time. Um, Monday morning, we'll all touch base, the three of us, on what topics we maybe want to hit on our Monday show, um, and then what potential news there might be. Once we've sorted that out, I go about making the broadcast on StreamYard and making the graphics for it. I've put a lot of emphasis in graphics. I think the appearing professional is an important aspect of us starting this thing up. So doing that, um, doing a little bit of research. So, thankfully, a lot of my research will come through writing my article. I'll
Mhm.
have whatever post game points I want to hit on the players that did well, the players that didn't do well. Um, and through investigating those points, um, finding supporting evidence, supporting data pieces, uh, supporting clips or film moments. While I'm doing that for those individual pieces, I'll find pieces of evidence that I can then use in that Monday show. Um, so that kind of feeds itself. Tuesday, I'm then reaching out to our Tuesday hosts to figure out what they want to talk about. Same cycle on that front. I'm not on that show, but in terms of building the show out. Wednesday, we've got a Let's Talk Broncos again, so that's the same as Monday. I don't put together our Friday show, so I don't have to think about it at that point. And then it really just repeats. I get ready for Sunday, watch the games intently, take notes, and get back on the treadmill.
Um, During the off season, how does that look like? Is it still like a similar schedule or?
Off season's different. Yeah, off season is very different. I think it's one thing to keep in mind. I don't know if this is just a general media class or sports media, but if you're in sports media, you are going to be generally working when everybody else isn't. Because
Mhm.
that's the thing about sports. They air them when people aren't working, so people will watch them, which means you're going to be working when other people aren't, almost always. So that's in season, I guess. Off season then becomes a little bit more like a teacher schedule. It's funky. When I was on the Broncos beat, because that's probably the best example to go off of. Yeah, it just changes dramatically. You go in, there'll be like the end of season slash start of the off season press conference. There'll be, something at the combine if you end up going to the combine. There'll be something kind of after free agency and before the draft. There'll be something immediately after the draft. And then, training camp starts up and you're back to it. So there's like 4 events in the middle of off season that you're doing. Um, and I think like oddly, like free agency is probably the peak busy time on the calendar from a writing standpoint or the draft, just because there is so much to write about and unpack and so much analysis to give, and so much happening at once. Um, that those times can be especially busy. But outside of those like peaks in the off-season calendar, yeah, it is probably kind of like being a teacher in the summer or something. It's where like there's work to do, but the hour demands are a lot lesser. And I think it all balances out, is what I'd tell you. I don't think you should get super hyped on that, thinking like, hey, I don't have to work as much with this job. Because it does all balance out with the long hours during the season.
Um, And then just wanted to ask, where do you see Let's Talk Broncos evolving in the next few years? Do you have any goals or changes you're excited about as you grow that platform?
Yeah, yeah. I think looking at the media scape right now, it's brutal out there, as I'm sure, y'all in class can relate to. I'm sure that's a common talking point. It's brutal out there. It's hard. I think you look at NFL media and ESPN laying off a ton of like quality names this past summer. And for me, I don't want to be beholden to that stuff. So I want my own company to be the thing, ideally. I figure that's the best way to protect myself. Um, so that I think is the goal. The goal is to find some way to make a substantial living off of this. Ultimately, in terms of the coming years, how to continue growing, um, you know, it's tough. The YouTube algorithm dictates so much of that. To where there's things we'd want to do even this year and started doing at the front half of this season and then realized, oh, the YouTube algorithm is going to actively punish us for doing that. Like switching around our hosts, giving some more people camera time and mic time and whatnot, um, having a wider variety of shows. Um, so it's tough. I would have, you asked me before the season, I'd say continuing to expand. Now I think it's probably the goal right now is probably trying to find a way to integrate all the pieces we currently have together in a way that allows us to produce like very regular content that is also familiar um, to the audience we currently have and appealing to the new audience we don't. That's the thing, just trying to build that consistency. I think trying to have more shows a week, just normal Let's Talk Broncos shows with me, Joey, and Bree would be a goal. Um, but it's hard. A lot of it, like we're starting this thing up. We are trying to just continue to grow it and continue to put one foot in front of the other, get more and more YouTube viewers, continue to be consistent and upload, and kind of field of dreams our way to the top. Build it, and hopefully people come.
Is there anything you'd like to share about your work with Let's Talk Broncos or sports journalism that we haven't covered already?
Yeah, first check us out if you like Broncos coverage or the draft. I really do think highly of our stuff. And I don't think my opinion's that biased there. I think our people are dang smart and really honest with their analysis. So I'd say that. Um, I hit on it before. I would just advise everybody to like do the thing. I think everyone gravitates to either journalism or media or whatever reason people are taking this class for, because they want to do something with it, obviously, whether that be interviewing or podcasting or radio or TV or writing or newspaper, like whatever sect it is. I imagine these people want to get into some branch of media where they're creating something, or even if it's graphic design, whatever it might be, start doing it now. Don't worry that no one's going to see. Frankly, it's probably better that no one's going to see it while you're figuring shit out. I wouldn't worry about how silly it feels or if people are seeing it or if people care or if people like it or like, and some feedback, like take some constructive feedback, try and get better, of course, but you got to do it. And I've given that advice to a lot of young people, and not a lot of young people, I think, take me up on it. But I tell you, it is the best thing you'll do. Get an internship, even or do it on your own. I have learned so much more from writing on my own without like, and just rereading it and trying to polish myself up than I did from like 90% of my college classes. I had like two, three awesome college professors that I learned a lot from, and a lot of them were filling the time. I do it. You are going to learn so much more from doing the thing, whatever the thing is, than from hearing about it, reading about it, theorizing about it. Do it, be bad, make mistakes, and also don't make. I love my mom to death. She's wanted to be a writer for a long time, and she has these short stories that she's just never really finished because she just is editing them perpetually to try and make them perfect. Don't do that. Put it out there. Let it be bad. Because then it'll be rewarding when 3 months from now you look back at that first thing and you go, whoa, that was bad. But look at the new thing I put out. It's so much better. Look how far I've come. Don't be paralyzed. You know, one, do the thing, two, put it out there. Even if no one views it, if you get 3 views, if you get 0 views on YouTube, if you get 0 clicks on your WordPress blog, great. Just put it out there and just like, keep doing it. It's a muscle. All of this stuff is a muscle, and it'll only get stronger by you going to the gym and working it out.